Good afternoon and good evening to the rest of you. We are back for another episode of Bitcoin Magazine Live. It is I, your host, Q, coming to you yet again from my mom's basement. And I'm joined by Brian Armstrong lookalike. Alex McShane is my co-host. And we are joined by special guest today, Texas Slim. Texas Slim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Q. Thanks for having me on again, and good to see you.
It's great to have you on. I could see Alex's frustration with the Brian Armstrong jokes is waning thin at this point.
They're
But
getting very old at this point.
joke will never die. Keep it going in the chat, guys. But in the meantime, I wanted to dive in with Texas Slim on what exactly is the Bitcoin Beef Initiative that you and your team have been drumming up from the ground floor.
Yeah, it's the Beef Initiative right now is we're doing education. We're basically we're promoting things. We're a promotion company. We're a production company. We're a lot of things. What we are is about a lot of awareness. I started everything with the Beef Initiative with a news a Substack, and it was called The Harvest of Deception. And what it was based on was basically the industrial food complex and kind of where we are within our food supply, how it's basically processed, where it comes from, starting from the soil up. And so with that education, we've evolved into, I'm from Texas, we're from cattle country. So I decided to call something the Beef Initiative. And what that is getting some awareness to basically how screwed up our human health is in the United States of America, how many corruption models are within our food industry itself, how it is used as a weapon against us and as a drug against us. And within that education, you have to have a solution. So the Beef Initiative is basically tying the consumers back into the ranchers themselves. We're cutting out all the middlemen and we're decentralizing animal protein, and we're doing it with the Bitcoin narrative and basically the ethos of what Bitcoin is all about. It's a new store of value for both the rancher, the animal producer, and the consumer themselves. We've got it to where we're selling beef now, and we're doing it decentralized, and we're accepting Bitcoin for beef. And I don't believe a lot of people are able to do that at this point because they do not have market access to those ranchers. And so we've got a lot of ranchers that have come on board that are joining it. They're educating themselves on Bitcoin. We're about to announce basically an education series for the ranchers. So this has kind of been a really good bridging gap of communication, of lifestyles, of market access to food. And so it's pretty broad, but that's kind of a general understanding.
So, do you want to get into, for people who are born, like my co-host here, live their whole lives in a city? What is a rancher? What do you do?
Well, if you look at, we'll just say state of Texas, because that's where I'm from. So being from Texas, I grew up eating beef. So the guys that steward these animals, that take care of them, and basically, bring them to your table is a rancher. They basically raise cattle. So they're cattlemen. And back in the day, it wasn't that big of a mystery, but as much as our food systems and supplies have been so centralized that really people don't even understand where beef comes from. It comes from a factory. That's what they know. And so there's a lot of education in understanding what a rancher is, what a animal producer is, what a grass farmer is. A lot of grass farmers are animal producers. All of our meat and our protein come from the soil, and it comes from those minerals from that soil, and that's where we get our strength. That's where we get our protein. So there's a lot of education in understanding what a rancher is and what beef is and what animal protein is, and basically the best source of that you can get.
So, do you have other crops besides grasses to feed your cattle and sell?
Well, I mean, that's a broad question. I mean, of course, we have grains. You have all kinds of different edibles. You have forage. You can raise cattle on anything that is edible, that is basically, comes from the soil, that is something that they've always evolved into doing. Before we had cattle, we had bison in the United States. We had millions and millions of bisons, and they went across the Great Plains and they ate all the grasses that were across the Great Plains. So being a rancher, there's a lot of ways to be a rancher. Geography, locations of country where you are. In Texas, there's a lot of grass. There's a lot of grasslands. A lot of people have to do a lot of grain feeding of cattle. As we've grown, that's become a dependency for the rancher that it got so centralized that now it's under the umbrella of Monsanto, Bayer, Cargill, these feed and seed companies that basically are chemical companies. And so, looking at the beef initiative, we're educating what a regenerative farmer rancher is. And that's it kind of goes in the territory, it starts with the source of the seed of where this grass comes from or this feed comes from, not from a chemical company, but from the ground up.
Do you want to talk about some of the regenerative practices that your cattle partake in, especially when it comes to like crop rotation and stuff like that?
Well, what you're doing is the best way to look at this is you have acres and acres that you have that are natural, grasslands, let's say. What a regenerative farmer rancher will do is he'll let those cattle or those animals, it could be sheep, it could be goats, it could be a lot of different animals that graze those grasslands and forage. And so what you do is you do section by section, and those animals become the land tools of that grass. And what they'll do is they'll eat the grass down to a certain level, but they won't uproot the grass because the root systems in the soil is what's very important. So you keep the root systems basically intact. You let the land tools graze on that land, and then you'll move them into different sections of that land. Therefore, the soil keeps on growing, the grass keeps on coming back, and they basically become somewhat of a routine, and that's how you grow land or soil, and that's how you grow grass, and that's how you grow animal protein. And we've always done this. We just got off track, within I always just like to it happened before 1971, but whenever the dollar became debased, this is when these chemical companies came in. We were doing basically bombs during World War II, and then we got into fertilizers, and then we got into pesticides, and then we got into genetically modifying seeds. We got into a way that we said, hey, we can feed the world with this type of new crop systems. Well, that eliminated a lot of the regenerative farming and ranching in the United States. But that's how my grandfather did it, and that's how all of our grandparents did it. Was a regenerative way. We got off base after 1971 really bad. Eric Butts of the Nixon administration said, you're going to go big or you're going to go home. And that's when we started monocropping our lands, tilling up the land and not really using the soil like we had done for hundreds and thousands of years before now. And so it come to the point where this type of monocrop farming and ranching with the pesticides, herbicides, have basically killed the soil. We're coming up to a decade now that there's going to be a mass movement to try to hide that fact, or there's going to be a mass movement such as the Beef Initiative. It's going to say, hey, you're going to look back at history and you're going to see how we used to do it. This is the best thing for your health. This is the best thing for the soil. It's the best thing for the land. It's the best thing for our nation. And it's definitely the best thing for Bitcoiners.
Do you want to talk about how the government offers subsidies or tries to influence how you as a rancher, if at all, farm your land?
Well, as we've moved forward, I mean, most of cattle, everything's commodity markets, grains, commodity markets. There's so much manipulation, basically subsidizing everything that is basically around our food system per se. You can go up to a lot of, and there's a lot of ranchers that it's not calling ranchers out here. It's not calling anybody. There's no judgment here. It's just we're here because we're here. But you can talk to, I'd say 10 ranchers that have to follow something, and they're basically under the USDA because you have to. If you're under that umbrella of USDA, you're going to have an insurance policy. And I usually ask ranchers, I say, where's the store of value of your cow now? It used to be in the cow, and it used to be in the land itself. And it was something that you could leverage and saying, hey, I've got enough land, or I've got my cattle are healthy. I've got enough cattle to where I can leverage them throughout this year. And basically they're going to be a store of value that I can rely on. I think within the last 10 to 20 years, basically, the store of value of our cattle industry has become to where most of the time it's going to be in that USDA insurance policy. If you don't have that USDA insurance policy, you're going to be up a creek, man, because you're not going to have that leverage. And it does get subsidized. There's rules and regulations that are associated with this insurance policy. If you do not follow the insurance policy of something like something that Monsanto created, what's called the technology use agreement. If you don't follow that TAU agreement, basically you can't sell your crops or you can't grow your feed for your cattle. You can't do certain things under those USDA insurance policies. So you're basically your means to an end is to follow that USDA insurance policy because it's based on loopholes, subsidies, and a lot of damn corruption. And ranchers are trying to get away from that umbrella to where they're not relying on the USDA insurance policy. They're not relying on any chemicals. And what they're doing is they're letting the land be able to be regenerated, grown, the soil to get healthy again, and use the land tools to do that, and therefore have a beef industry in which we came from. That's where Texas came from. It was from the soil and it was from the cattle. It all started in 1878 in the state of Texas. And at that time, after the Civil War, we fed a nation. And that's where Texas came from. Well, that's what we're going to bring a new awareness is that we're changing the model. We're going and we're decentralizing the beef industry in the state of Texas. We're going to do it with a regenerative protocol that's going to have a store of value called a Bitcoin protocol. And we're going to basically marry the two. And we're having a lot of successes doing that right now.
So, for yourself, I guess when did you get involved in Bitcoin, and maybe when did you first trade, value for value and receive Bitcoin?
First time I got into Bitcoin late, just like everybody else. I mean, I knew about it even back in 2012. I was in a different place and everything, but I dabbled in it a little in 2017. I had some family issues, and I didn't really get into Bitcoin per se as heavily as I am now until right before COVID. I'd gotten hurt. I've had a lot of injuries, pretty rough and tumble guy, but I kind of had an internal injury and I started looking at Bitcoin as the same time I was looking back into food. And it became something that I started doing together. It's like I want to understand what nutrition is again because my internal injury was like a portal vein collapse and say, man, I really got to look at my nutrition. So as I did that, I started studying Bitcoin and I started seeing some similarities of ranchers and decentralization and stores of value. So the education went hand in hand, and I come from agriculture and ranching, and it really was a fun experiment to go into it together and started to basically acquire Bitcoin and basically learning how to hodl, store value, just basically self custody. And then we came to a point where I knew that the rancher really was not going to be somebody that um, would go out there and buy it at first, but they wouldn't mind accepting Bitcoin for their beef. So value for value exchange is what we started thinking about. And we built those on ramps to where, the ranch can accept Bitcoin and, the Bitcoiners can basically trade value for value, what they see fit for the beef.
It's amazing. I wish we had more of that where I am. We need to. I'd happily part with some Bitcoin for some good grass-fed beef.
Well, you can go to the Beef Initiative right now, beefinitiative.com, and order some beef. I mean, we've been selling. We've got proof of work, man. We've been doing this for a couple months. I haven't really advertised it. We've sold tens of thousands of dollars worth of regenerative grown good grass fed beef from of verified rancher that we're in partnership. And so we're selling. I think we sold 25 boxes of beef yesterday. So Bitcoiners are they're flooding in. So join them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll check that out. Just on a side note, I don't know if there's something on your end, but your internet's kind of coming and going, so I'm having a little trouble hearing you right now. Um, but
Okay, is that better right now?
it might be. Maybe we'll turn it over to Q. You want to follow up a question? I'll order myself some beef here.
Texas Slim, I kind of want to touch on a little bit of what we were talking about before we actually started going live. And you kind of mentioned a little bit about the ongoing issue with fertilizer costs. I'd love for you to just sort of
Right.
share with all of us maybe, A, what's going on, and then how it's really impacting your guys' business?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about being regenerative. Once again, you're not relying on as many chemicals as a lot of people. People will use fertilizer on grasslands, and so they can have their grasslands for their cattle. Some people use just 100% compost. So, as far as fertilizer itself, a lot of people don't understand where a lot of the fertilizer comes from. Is China, Russia, Ukraine, places like that, to where guess what? We've been predicting over a year that there's going to be some fertilizer shortages in the United States, and it's starting to become something that is playing out in real time. And so with fertilizer shortages, we won't go down deep into it. It's basically happening. And I guess you could look at like last year, if you were going to do a couple of tons of fertilizer, you're paying around 200 a ton, I believe it was. I believe Cole with KNC Cattle the other day said it was about 1,200 a ton. So do the math on that. And that's where we are. And if you don't have fertilizer, well, let's look at the crops that we grow, because all of our wheat basically, well, the wheat in the global wheat market right now, China owns six, or has in possession 60% of the all wheat. Okay, so we don't have as much wheat as we used to. Last year's yields weren't as big. This year we're going into a drought. We don't have as much planting. Winter wheat in a lot of sections of the country were, they were basically already destroyed, or, as losses. So you see a perfect storm of not being able to grow the grains that rely on that fertilizer, grain shortages coming. So a lot of people that do basically still have to operate under that umbrella of these chemical companies, they're going to be hit the hardest. The small rancher or farmer doesn't rely on these chemical companies, they're not going to be as hit because they're doing things in a regenerative way. And that's what the education needs to be about, is we don't have to rely on these chemical companies anymore. We can do a vertical integration back into our food supply that starts with the soil with no chemicals. And we have a lot of ranchers across the United States that are doing that. And that's a lot of the awareness that we're bringing. The fertilizer shortages are out there, but if you're a true regenerative farmer rancher, you're not concerned about it, because that's not one of your basically inputs that you have to worry about.
Are there any inputs right now that you guys are feeling an impact due to the ongoing issues, whether it's the supply chains, Vladimir Putin, or whatever you want to blame it on? Is there some sort of strain that you guys are feeling?
Well, yeah, the fertilizer is already hitting. Go from $200 a ton to 1,200 a ton. Yeah, people are just not going to do it. Fertilizer is a big one right now. It's huge. And it takes time for everybody to see it. It doesn't happen in real time. It's not like you see a glass of water and all of a sudden the water's gone. It's a drip approach. I would say you're really going to see some impacts into the United States economy and with our food supply. You'll definitely be, there's be some painful times around September, October of this year. And as that happens, you're going to have a lot of people hoarding. You're going to have a lot of different people questioning where their food's coming from. So I say from here on May until September of this year is going to be pretty loud of a awakening. And a lot of people are going to start really focusing on where their food truly comes from and the dependencies, how centralized it truly is, and how we really don't have control over our food supply as citizens anymore. We used to, but the centralization of our industrial food complex took that away from us. And what we're really focusing on, just like we're building nodes of localized, hyper localized communities that are that are sourcing their beef and their produce, in a decentralized way that's very, very effective. And I don't look at the news anymore, man. I haven't watched TV in 2 years. So I don't know what's going on out there, man. I'm too busy building and innovating. I really don't. I'm eating the best I've ever eaten, man. I got plenty of beef. I got plenty of friends. I can go anywhere across this country right now and go shake somebody's hand and have a place to stay. It's because we're looking at our freaking food supply, and we're not rent seeking into our basically our desires of that it tastes good. We're looking about what nutrition is again, and it's a kind of a lifestyle. I'm trying to get the Bitcoiners to really join up. And I get it, man. A lot of people in the city. I lived in Austin for most of my professional life, and I was just as bad as not really sourcing my food in the way I should have. But people now in the Bitcoin community, and I like to say this, and it's not preaching, but if you're talking about Bitcoin and you're not talking about your food supply, you're missing a boat here a little bit. Because how can you complain about a decentralized and debased dollar and that your food is not as debased as that money supply, which you're looking at the USD dollar basically.
I want to unpack something that you said where I think it was very interesting. This isn't going to be just like the glass of water isn't just going to go empty. It's going to be a slow and steady drip. And you're anticipating this to really be protracted until September-ish. I'm not trying to like quote you on a date, but talk to us a little bit about like, I go to the grocery store. I've already seen the cost of things going up very steadily over the last 2 years. And so talk to me about like, what should I be expecting just from your perspective? Does this mean I'm going to see this steady increase continue, or is it going to start to accelerate or be more subtle? Talk to me a little bit about like, honestly, I'm just trying to figure out, do I need to run down to my butcher and buy so much?
No, that's cool. No. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and that's what when I started writing The Harvest of Deception, man, I had to look at things and I had to say, where am I going? Where's my entry point into this understanding to where I can communicate it? And you got to get to the source of the seed or your freaking nutrition first. And if you can start looking at that, that's going to give you a compass that you can kind of go for, and you can look at that'll give you kind of a base layer of understanding of what we're up against right now. So one, you got to educate yourself on the basically the centralized food system in which we have to operate and consume our food. You know, whenever you check yourself and say the only reason I ate today was because of a chemical company, and that is the truth. You know, that is the truth. Most of our food in the United States is basically approved by a chemical company that is actually, approved by the FDA, which is a joke anymore. So if you look at it like that, say I'm gonna look at what the source of the seed of my nutrition is, you kind of get a start, and you can come and you can read my basically the newsletter. There's plenty of information out there. But to be somebody in your position that's saying the city, what you need to do is I tell everybody, hey, go shake a freaking rancher's hand and go up to them and say, I want to know everything about you and how can I help you? I want to help spread the word of who you are. Okay, somebody in this is not going to be able to do that. I'm asking people to come into the beef initiative. We're getting a crowdsourced index to where people are, if they're already using somebody, if they're in Manhattan and they're using somebody in New York State, come and bring your information, put it into the beef initiative so people can search that and you can contact these ranchers that are out there and we're bringing them into the beef initiative. As far as the grocery store, I don't go to the grocery store that much anymore. Maybe once or twice a month, man. I've got a full cow and 4 freezers. And so, I eat beef, man. I don't eat a bunch of other stuff, honestly. And I'm not like this hardcore carnivore. I eat bacon and eggs and beef, and I'll eat some vegetables and stuff like that. But you find whenever you kind of point your compass in this direction, you're freaking shopping, man. It's going to change, and you're not going to. I don't. When I go to the grocery store, I don't go to the middle aisles unless I'm getting salt and pepper and coffee, man. And beyond that, I hit the outside aisles because all that stuff in the middle is trash. It's complete trash. And a lot of people, you start noticing what food is and what food is not. And basically all the fake commodities that they've injected into our food supplies, you just get some awareness. And once again, this is not a freaking judgment, and we're all guilty of this. But once you understand, especially a Bitcoiner, once you understand decentralization and store of value and first principles, you're going to start wondering, why am I eating this crap anymore? So, and I'm not a nutritionist, man. I'm not a diet guy. I'm not a fitness guy. I'm just a dude that grew up in Texas around cattle.
Hey, you may not be a diet or nutrition guy, but we all have a diet. We've all got, everybody has their nutritional habits, and I happen to agree with you. The only thing I've had today is a piece of salmon. I eat a lot of meat, but I like food that comes from the ground, food that is ingredients, not food that has chemicals and preservatives. You find that you don't need to eat as much, or at least I do. You have one good, a good steak a day, like you'll be all right. We'll be just fine. Just as anecdotal, but my great grandparents were farmers. They lived both past 100 years old. They ate one meal a day, a good homegrown meal. That was it. And they're healthy as can be.
Pretty much. It's so true. Well, you look at, I mean, you look at the whole history of the food pyramid, and this, I mean, it's just fascinating to follow. It's so easy to see how screwed up it is. And like you said, once you get on like a protein diet, like eating steak and stuff, which I do every day, you eat once, you eat every 20 hours, and you're not hungry. I mean, you have plenty of strength. I mean, you don't even think about food like a lot of people do and have to do, because a lot of people don't understand. Let me get some percentages here. 78% of people in the United States are either obese or overweight. One out of two of us is diabetic. That's because of our freaking consumption models. And that consumption model means, yeah, it means food, but it also means freaking audio and video and content. And a lot of the marketing out there, a lot of the misinformation is directly against you and making you confused about what's food anymore. And it's done by these global corporations that are doing this one world food group. It's not a lie anymore. It's happening. And there's an industry shift that's going on within our food industry. And just like they did in the early 70s, it's going to hit big time, and people aren't prepared for it. So if you look at that as far as an industry shift in your food supply, and most of our food supply is industrial, you have to have new industry. So these factories that are burning up as far as processing centers across the United States. What this is an industry shift to basically start processing food in a different way. And they're going to say it's because we're going to save the planet. And they're basically going to have a war on meat, which they're already doing. And they're going to say that animal protein is bad for you, which they've already been doing for years. And for the same amount of decades that they've been telling us that beef is bad for you, we've gone to where we are basically metabolically bankrupt. And that's because we're following that food pyramid. Our bodies do not understand what nutrition is anymore. And so there'll be food supply shortages, but there's also going to be a nutritional starvation that we're doing to ourselves and we're doing to our children right now. And people need to wake the hell up, because it's happening. And 46% of our children in the United States now are obese or overweight between the ages of 5 and 11. Most of that happened during COVID, and the shift is happening within food. And if you're going to go random into tasting food and basically eating it because it tastes good and not understanding what nutrition is, you're going to keep on consuming this consumption model that's going to lead to a shorter lifespan. It's that simple. And if you can't see it, you got your eyes closed.
I think one of the best lessons I ever learned, and I shout out my dear friend Mary Izzo, who taught me this like 6 years ago now. But to what Texas Slim has been saying, I know his internet's been a little spotty. So in case you missed it, the biggest takeaway for those of you who are city dwellers like myself, the grocery store is literally designed to poison you with every aisle that's in the middle of the store. If you only grocery shop on the outside of the store, where all the refrigerated stuff is, where the produce is, where the butcher section and the beef are, where the bakery is, that's where the non-processed foods are, because that's where they need to be refrigerated. I just wanted to re-emphasize that, because that was a huge learning lesson for me on my journey to like stop eating processed foods and like really understand what's in a food label. And I will not get off of this horse until Joe Consorti stops posting pictures of his damn Monster energy drinks. Those things are just fucking poison.
Hey, I'm excited, Texas Slim. Me and Chris just ordered our first boxes from y'all, so looking forward to try awesome. This. Yeah, I'm really excited, man. What's the so where does it come from? The stuff on the website? Do you have a hand in that ranching, or is that just?
Yeah,
how does it work?
That's basically, it's a partnership that I formed. Yeah, that was a partnership that I formed with Casey down there in right south of Boston. And so what we did, we went in there and I basically, I go out and I meet ranchers, and I kind of, basically it's Cole Bolton. He's like a fourth generation rancher here in the state of Texas. But what we did was we came to an early understanding, collectively understanding that Bitcoin is going to be a base layer of value for the rancher. And so we kind of orange pill coal, and then let's start selling this beef. And what we're doing, I'll say it again, we're doing a vertical integration into human health again, and we're doing it with the American rancher. And so Cole and I have partnered up, and basically from the soil to the grass, to the cow, to the producer, to the processor, to the supplier, we are one of those touch points now collectively as a partnership. So there's nobody can tell us, we don't have to ask for permission. We've done everything we're supposed to do as far as USDA in the state of Texas. We have our own processing center now. We don't have to rely on JBS, Cargill, National, and Tyson to process our animal protein. So that's what's moving forward in the state of Texas. And part of the beef initiative as well is that we're now advising people in the state of Texas, if you want to open up a microprocessor in the state of Texas, the gateway will be coming through the Beef Initiative Association, because we have proof of work, we have USDA precedents. And so by doing that, we're decentralizing our beef supply in the state of Texas, and we're trying to bring it to every state across the United States. And so those are those nodes that we're building. And it started with basically what we're providing you guys right now. That is regenerative beef. It's the best beef in the world, and you can pay with Bitcoin or you can pay with fiat. So we know exactly where the cow come from. We know the cow's life. We know what all the grasslands that those cows raised, the soil that it did help regenerate. So we know every touch point of that cattle's life, and every touch point of the cattle as it was processed, every touch point of that beef that is being shipped to you. It was just Cole and I, nobody else.
What is your favorite? I feel pressured into buying one of these boxes, and I'm genuinely looking at all of them. I have two questions for you.
Man, you have to.
I might as well ask you while I've got you on the show. But like, for example, I'm Persian. When you make Persian kebab, you're supposed to use a higher ground beef sort of fat to beef ratio, just so that it sticks to the skewer. So I'm genuinely curious, what is that ratio on the ground beef that you guys have?
Man, it depends on the cow. I mean, for everybody to go into that 80-20% and everything, you get two different, it's usually, I like a lot of high fat content. And that's what I'm thinking about Cole, which is so great. He does regenerative and he does grain finish, but we grain finish this non-GMO grain that we know exactly where it came from. And it is as clean as grain as you can get. So his beef has got the fat content. So I would say, we're around 78% beef and then 20-30% on that fat. Do not quote me because I don't know, man. I don't look at those percentages, and I know what you're talking about. I love a fatty meat, man. That's why I love Cole as far as the protocol and raising the beef.
What's your favorite cut of a cow?
Oh man, it's unlimited. Right? Whenever you go into this type of understanding of that, what do they sell for cuts in the supermarkets these days? And there's going to be over 20 different types of cuts. I mean, there's a picanha cut. There's the Denver. The Denver cut is a really cool one. It's basically, a lot of people don't know what it is, and they never even heard of it. And it's an inexpensive piece of meat. It's not going to be like your tomahawk ribeye, but if you're really going to ask me, my favorite, I mean, I'm from Texas, man. It's a T-bone. It has to be. But, you get your fillets, you get your picanhas, you get your Denver cuts, you get your sirloins, you get your cowboy ribeyes, you get flat, you get iron. There's so many things. And once you've had regenerative beef, you'll never eat another slab of meat from the supermarket ever again. If you do, it's because you're in a pinch.
Do you hunt as well at all?
Oh, I grew up hunting. Where I grew up, we're about 4 hours from the mountains where I grew up. That's the Southern Rockies out in New Mexico. And so we grew up hunting deer. Yeah, I used to elk hunt with my buddy that I grew up with. So yeah, we've done hog hunts, deer hunts, mules, whitetails, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was living in Albuquerque a few
We
years
always
ago, and
had we
that's.
always had venison. Y-
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry, that
Continue.
delay.
Yeah, you had a lot of venison growing up.
No, yeah, we just yeah we had a lot of venison. We made a lot of sausage and everything like that. I mean, how I was raised in this part of Texas, you all had a freezer full of beef. It's just what you had. And then you have your hunting seasons, and you always had your venison, you had your elk if you were lucky. No, you had your hog, and so it's very common, and that's what I'm trying to make fun of people, basically educate and bring some awareness. Is this is not that difficult. This is where we came from. This is what was the norm. As we centralized our food more and more, we a lot of people got away from hunting, of course, and a lot of people got away from even understanding what real beef is, or even look at the poultry market. I mean, it's been so captured for so many years. You look at these chickens now, man. Seriously, you think that's a real chicken? You know how much those things are huge, and that is not because it's a natural damn chicken. The chicken's only 30 days old, and here we are off the harvest. People really do not understand what food is, and they basically are doing this because of the labeling systems are so corrupt. The organic, the grass fed, everything that you look at these days, you do not know where that food came from. And so, that's why hunting, of course, you know where the food came from. And I'll eat any type of game out there. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm also kind of curious, Texas Slim. Like I know we've talked a lot about beef, and you've brought up now just like the way too large breasted chickens that KFC's farms have like wandering around. Like curious as to what other types of meats you or your family or your team have ever like explored going down, both growing and
Hmm.
trying to like live off of.
Well, I have this conversation a lot. I love lamb. Lamb is awesome. It's like one
That's
of
my
my
favorite.
favorites as well. I've been on the world a couple times. I've had some great lamb in different places, man, by far. And my local producer here, his name's Dustin. I just got a quarter of a cow from him, but he does sheep and he does fowl and hog. And so there's a good variety that a lot of these ranchers and also slash animal producers, those are the big ones I see definitely is lamb is one of the best things. And it's really good because if you can't be a rancher, if you can't be, a cattleman, you can basically raise sheep, and lamb are awesome for the ground too, as far as the soil. I'm sorry. And so sheep, you see a lot of sheep coming back to the state of Texas, and there's big movements to get back into lamb. I see that something being very prominent, especially in the Bitcoin space, because it's going to be a little bit more doable. And to steward the land is easier, and steward lamb, the sheep as well, is a little bit different than having a bunch of cattle.
Yeah, there's some my mom actually facilitated there's like a local, a finished landfill. So you got a big grassy area, and rather than pay people to mow it, we just brought in one shepherd and 100 goats. And they would just
Hmm.
come rotate out through the season
Yeah.
and eat down all the grass. It's great.
I mean, and that's right there. That's poetic. I mean, that's where we came from, man. That's why this country used to be like an oasis. I mean, every geographical point system in this country was fascinating as far as the nature involved, the soil that we had basically developed, the Midwest, the bison, how the Native Americans lived off of that land. You know, everything that we've done to the land is just the destruction of the beautiful, the beautiful place that we did have. And for now, for people to be in the regenerative movement like I am, and especially Bitcoiners, and for to be called something else, because we're domestic terrorists, if we're fighting against the globalists and everything like that. If people really understood what freaking soul was and where we actually came from, the narrative wouldn't fly. The psyop and the propaganda is so strong right now that people are that confused that yeah, you can put some goats on a pasture and it's going to regrow the soil, and that general understanding is not really known.
Yeah. Chris, you have any questions, comments?
No, I'm just taking it in.
Taking
Like
it
Alex,
in.
I'm buying a box as we speak from the Beef Initiative. Get it shipped to me.
You
But
guys are all right, man. Hey, did you buy the text? Go ahead.
no, go ahead, Alex. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say I got the steak lovers. We're gonna try that first.
I think I'm trying the Prime box. It looked pretty good, like a decent amount of beef, and
There
just
you
to
go.
try it out here.
Yeah, we'll drop the website in the chat so people
Hey,
who
and
are watching
also
can.
we just did this week. Yeah, do it. One thing we were doing as well is we did like a 20-pound ground beef box. Okay. I think that comes it's $105, I think, in USD. So if you did 20 pounds, that's a hell of a lot cheaper than the supermarket. And everybody that comes out here and says, well, I don't buy beef from my rancher because it's more expensive. You're actually, it's not true. Eat less. I spend less money on food now than I ever have. Just because I source my animal protein the way I do it through my system of the beef initiative. So price is not a big thing if you understand how much you actually waste on the basically random purchasing your food. And the one box that you guys didn't buy, and I'm expecting the next one is the Texas Slim's top end beef box. That's a beauty, man. Look at that. It's got some beef in there.
Texas Slim Top Hand Beef Box. I'm checking that out. Oh, that's got the tomahawk. Ooh, that's tempting.
Yeah, that's got a big. Yeah, you're gonna get it one of these days. You're gonna get it. I promise. But I appreciate you guys getting in there and doing this today. That's what we need. We need Bitcoiners in here. Everybody wants to work. We've got it. And people are coming along, and we're building these nodes across the United States, and it's going to be about decentralizing our freaking food. And everybody talks about it all the time as far as proof of work. Well, let's get some proof of work. Let's start sourcing our food in the ways that Bitcoiners are bringing it to the table. This is a collective effort, man. This is crowdsourcing, a new movement into where we're going as far as Bitcoiners. And we're just getting started with Beef Initiative. I mean, we're about to have a couple of processing centers online in the state of Texas. Our volume is going to go through the roof. And we're going to feed as many people as we can who wants to eat the right type of beef. And it's moved fast, but I mean our foundation and where we are as far as offering and the education that we're doing with the ranchers, the conferences that we're having across the United States, this is becoming something that's a little bit bigger than we thought in the beginning, but we're ready for it to kind of take over this year. And the narrative of our Colorado conference is in July. We're announcing that with formal tickets, I guess, on Friday. And then we've got other partnerships with regenerative people like Wild Pastures out in Georgia, Will Harris. We're going to have a conference out there in September. And so there's a lot of people that we're bringing to space. We had our first conference in Kerrville this on the 23rd, and we had like 9 really great speakers. So we're getting the Bitcoin community in. As far as speaking, education, we're bringing ranchers into it. Where ranchers are meeting Bitcoiners. None of your business. He came to the conference and he said, you had Bitcoiners, orange pilling ranchers, and you had ranchers ranch pilling Bitcoiners. And it was a perfect phrase because that's exactly what's going on here is that we're bridging the gap. And a lot of people starting to figure it out that, a Bitcoiner thinks like a rancher and a rancher thinks like a Bitcoiner. So let's innovate with that type of understanding and awareness we're creating here.
Yeah,
Texas Slim,
absolutely.
you got anything to say to vegans? Feel free to look directly at the camera and just tell vegans how stupid they are.
Well, one thing about that is, vegans are very idealistic, and I bless their hearts because, I wish them well, but we didn't come from eating, we didn't eat the grass. We ate the animals that ate the grass. That's the process of getting true protein that you need. Being a vegan right now, you have to be very wealthy to pull off and being able to pull it off. If you're still buying your produce, and I don't care if it's Whole Foods or if it's, Central Market in Austin, you're not getting the best produce that you can get. And if you're just generally buying through supermarkets and you're a vegan, well, you look at those labels and see how much genetically modified crap is in that. Look how many chemicals such as, all the seed oils you're consuming, seed oils being rapeseed, soybean oils, everything that basically has gotten us or basically metabolically bankrupt. I mean, I bless your heart, man. You're not going to make it because the only thing that you can really rely on right now, especially in our country, is to kind of be sovereign. And the best way to be sovereign is with pure animal protein. So, I mean, I saw a picture the other day. You bring this up. It was Robert Downey Jr. And it was a picture of him, I guess, a year ago, and he went vegan. You go take a look at him now, a year, and you're starting to see this pattern. All these Hollywood people, all these woke people, and everything, they're turning into this veganism, but they're looking like they're freaking going through nutritional starvation, is what it looks like. So that's what I think about vegans. Bless your heart.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I don't do whatever you want with your time in your life, but I don't think it's very healthy or sustainable. And I don't think it's as cruelty free as they think it is. We were talking about this yesterday, how, when you run a
No.
combine through a field, it's a massacre of the little ecosystems that popped up there.
Oh yeah, I mean, you want to talk about millions of animals that are basically even right now because planting season is moving forward within the model cropping system. Millions and millions of field animals die from foxes to mice, of course, rabbits, birds. I mean, it's unlimited the amount of destruction this monocropping is happening, and they're basically upping the volume on monocropping, and they're now basically going all vegetarian with the fake meat commodity that they're going with. And it's if you're a vegan and you're a vegetarian and you're looking at it because of animal cruelty, well, go look in the damn mirror. Who got proof? I mean, it's not a psyop. It's not a conspiracy theory. The amount of animals that do basically get destroyed every year is phenomenal, and the general public does not know that.
Here's my unpopular opinion. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You want to eat bugs? You want to eat the freaking grass that grows on my front lawn? You know what? Fine. Axel Fuzz, you are welcome to the grass of my parents' front lawn. Like, my issue with all of this shit is the idea or notion that your perspective or your perspective or your perspective is better than someone else's. The idea that we have to have this collective diet, in my opinion, is what led us down this path to where we were told, hey, just buy this Lunchable for your kid or buy this sugary cereal for breakfast. Like, here's some microwave dinner so you don't have to cook and you don't have to worry about it, because we created this collectivist diet when in fact my body reacts differently to beer than most other people's. My body reacts differently to spicy food than other people, or to beef than other people. And so I make those judgment calls. And this collectivist idea that everyone needs to do this is what, in my opinion, leads us down these wrong paths. And also, I'm getting really fucking sick of people telling me how to live my life. But that's just my mini rant. Sorry, needed to be done.
No, I mean, no, thank you. I mean, I'm glad you did. I don't do shit how you eat either, but you're not going to basically steal the nutrition of my children, and you're not going to weaponize food against me because I'm put my foot down and I say I'm sick of it. And so by saying that, me as an individual, I'm going to say, well, I know I'm going to understand what food is again, kind of how my grandfather taught me, and I'm going to go back to that because we were a hell of a lot healthier back then. You want to do your vegetarian and you want to do the vegan, that is your choice, man. Go for it. But don't you come at me and don't you step up on me saying that you're going to bring some type of conspiracy about how we're destroying the freaking planet and that a cow is a carbon hazard. Well, right there, you just lost all respect from where I stand. because you're living in a lie until you're ready to get rid of that brain fog that has got you to that point. Then, do whatever you're going to do, which is fascinating because I want everybody to consume whatever they're going to consume, because I know the people that are going with the consumption model basically, as what the beef initiative is regenerative, pure animal protein, that we're going to survive, and we're going to win this crap too, because people are going to understand with this movement, the food industry shift is that they're going to become even more unhealthier. And we're going to start seeing that within that, there's going to be a balance of awareness and awakening. And people are going to say, yeah, we have been lied to. And they're going to change the ways. The models will change. And if they don't, then they'll sit on their asses and they'll watch TV and they'll consume. So go.
I think we got a bit of a lag. We're cutting out there a little bit, but I heard the majority of it. So where do you see this network going? Maybe 5-10 years down the line. It looks like we're gonna hike interest rates another 50 basis points. Chris, is that right? We just had do you pay attention to what's going on in the macro environment, in the United States, or you just stay in your lane here?
Yeah, no, we're looking at everything. I'm actually next week I'm gonna start having I call it the Texas Slam Signal on my podcast, and we're gonna do something like a 30-minute cattle report, and we look at the global and we look at the micro macro as far as commodities, beef, and everything. Where I see this going, and I'll stay with beef right now, is within the beef industry, you're going to see them turning beef into caviar. They're going to price the common man out of beef in a way to where we're inflated, we're hyperinflation within our food system is already here, especially if it has anything to do with pure animal protein. They're going to price that out of most people's markets, and they'll supplement that animal protein with this new fake meat industry. They'll do it in certain ways a lot of people won't even be paying attention to. And so by saying that, yeah, I pay attention to it, but I don't have to pay attention to it as much as all the parrots out there. That's all they do, is they don't go and they don't find solutions, and they just keep on talking about how bad it is. Well, once you kind of follow this protocol, like within the beef initiative of what we're doing, and you focus and you're saying how this network grows. We've got people doing this in Colorado. We've got people doing this in Missouri. We've got people doing it in Oklahoma. They're following the beef initiative. The beef initiative is already spreading out across the United States. And I'm just now starting to basically let everybody know that we can do this, just like we do the Bitcoin meetups. We're doing the ranch meetups. I might hit the road in June and travel all the way up into the Colorado conference and just follow basically a path of Bitcoin meetups and bringing ranchers into those Bitcoin meetups. And those people that go to these Bitcoin meetups are going to have access to that beef, and it's going to be local. And so this is going to catch fire this year. This is happening, and we're going to decentralize our animal protein. And it's going to start in the Bitcoin world. That's why I chose the Bitcoin space, Bitcoin Twitter, to do all this, because I knew that basically Bitcoiners would help us spread out these nodes of networks. And it's happening, and it's happening pretty fast.
Absolutely. Texas Slim, I have to hop, but these two gentlemen will finish up the interview with you. It was a pleasure to meet you today, and I hope we can work together in the future. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. I cannot believe Alex
is thanks for buying that box, man.
Now.
Yeah, no worries. I'm sure I'll get more down the line. I can't wait to taste it, man. I'll see y'all later.
I need to reiterate this.
Yeah, let me know how it goes.
Alex has left us because he doesn't want to talk to us anymore, and he wants to go on a different podcast. Cannot stress how disrespected I feel.
That's fine.
More to come from this. Anyways, Texas Slim. We've talked veganism. We've talked a lot about the work you guys are doing. Talk to us about what comes next. What happens? How does this scale out? Do you guys look to expand, or do you guys look to orange pill? I don't know if orange pill is the right word, but maybe like, I'm going to say red for like a rare or medium rare cut. but like red
Right.
pill. Like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, how do we get more farmers to
Yeah.
replicate
Well,
this around the country?
yeah, and that's a good question. It's a slow roll, man. It has to come with a lot of time preference. And where that starts is education. You don't go up to a rancher and say, "Hey, do you accept Bitcoin?" You have to know how to talk to a rancher. You have to really gain some respect, and then you kind of discover everything about them and why they do what they do. You had that conversation with them. You know, the division of interpersonal communication in the United States right now and in the world is horrible. People don't know how to go up and talk to people anymore. And so that's what I said from the very beginning is I'm gonna go shake a damn rancher's hand. Okay, not everybody can do that, like I said before, but what you can do is you can come through the Beef Initiative, and how this network grows is just like Bitcoin grow. It's growing symbiotically with Bitcoin because every Bitcoin meetup should be talking about their food, and they should be talking about animal protein. And throughout, the next year, like I said, we're having 4 national conferences this year. There was a lot of people that came from 13 different states to that conference. And so we're building those nodes of understanding. For this year, what we're going to do is we're providing education to the ranchers. There's going to be a webinar series that we do that speaks definitely directly to the rancher and the why of Bitcoin first. By doing that, we've developed basically an online e-commerce system that we can sell to any rancher that wants to come through the Beef Initiative. We're going to start offering those e-commerce services. We're saying, hey, let's get you up to speed. Let's get you orange pilled, and basically we'll call it ranch pilling. I like that, ranch pilling. So we'll ranch pill Bitcoiners. And so we'll do this together, man. This is crowdsourcing. This is an open source. This is an open source network building. Basically, I like to say it's going to be based on sound money, sound health, sound communications for a sound future. And so that's basically our mantra this year. Is this is how we're going to do it. Once again, if you're in Bitcoin and you're not looking at your food supply and how you access your food supply, you're going to get behind. But what happens in Manhattan, and we go through some type of shortage? Manhattan clears out in 3 days. And if you're somebody that's in Manhattan that knows how to source your animal protein, and you're kind of being proactive, you don't have to buy full cow, but you can have a month's supply of beef, and it helps your pocketbook. You don't stress about all this noise out there, all these distractions about what's going on with our food supply. You take action and you help out and you contribute. If you're going to, if you're attending podcasts, let's bring in the discussion of our pure animal protein, the Beef Initiative. And once we all start doing that, it just scales every little community across the United States. We've got a couple of guys in Missouri, small town Missouri, man. They're already feeding their local community dairy, beef, fowl, eggs. I mean, it's catching on, and they're creating these little food sheds. And so there's a lot to catch up on within the Bitcoin community to say, hey, we need to catch up with these decentralized food producers that are actually been here all the time. Let's go talk to them. Let's educate them about Bitcoin. And you just don't go up there and you let them know the why first. And then after we let them know the why, they're going to understand. And then we can kind of do that transformation in that adoption period. 2022 is going to be a huge adoption period for transactional Bitcoin and understanding the store value.
And right now, like on your website, I can pay in Bitcoin. Are you guys utilizing a Lightning Network? Is this on chain? Talk to us a little bit about sort of how you
Yeah,
guys are.
Yeah, we're right now we can in moving in the future. We're going to partner up with the Oshi app. It's too because the Oshi is a rewards program, and it's a kick-ass app, and it's evolving fast. It's that'll perfect for the ranchers, and you can use we use OpenNode, BTC Pay. We do, it's on the Lightning Network for sure. We're going to have our own personal node in Texas. We're connecting those nodes. That's under development right now. As far as we are basically, on the Lightning Network, how we're going to do as the Lightning nodes build, so do the beef nodes. And so transactionally, we'll basically, you have to have your wallet. It's just like any transaction. You go there, you got a Blue Wallet, you're on the Lightning Network, you can use it. and you pay, and it's as easy as that. It's very simple. We're not doing it by KYC. You would have to have your email address, so we can ship your dang beef. We have to have your address, of course. But, as far as going into this adoption period, transactional Bitcoin, it's all over the place. But I think we've got it down. We have a very good roadmap with partnerships with like Oshi, BTC Pays coming out with some releases. Let's see the integration into, all these other payment applications, and it'll take care of itself. But right now, it's basically as easy as it gets. We like to take all that friction away from this, and that's the biggest intimidation that a lot of people have, is the friction that is involved with paying with Bitcoin.
Love that. We've posted the link so that any of you guys who are watching, it's in our chat box over on the side. We'll post it one more time for you guys in Texas Slim. For our audience members who want to keep up to date with all the stuff that you're doing, where is the best place for them to keep up with you?
Yeah, just on Twitter, it's at Modern Tea Man. You can do that. Beefinitiative.com. That's really the best informative place you can go, especially my Twitter. And then we have our Beef Initiative Twitter account too. It's at Beef Initiative. And on Telegram, it's at Beef Initiative. So there's a lot of good chats going on. There's a lot of good, conversations. We're bringing in chefs. We're bringing in recipes. We're bringing in cuts of the cow, like you brought up earlier. We're bringing in, actually, here pretty quick, the Beef Initiative. We're going to be talking about, how do you obtain cattle in the Bitcoin space. And so there's a lot of stuff that's coming down the pipe, man. And stay tuned to me. There's a lot of announcements that are happening Friday next week. I encourage everybody, man. You guys, the Bitcoiners have been great so far. We're kind of slow into, buying beef with Bitcoin. If you don't want to spend your Bitcoin, I don't want to spend my Bitcoin. I don't want the ranchers to be able to get Bitcoin. So, you can pay in fiat or you pay Bitcoin. And you spread the word, talk to your families. There's a newsletter you can go to, check it out, and Texas newsletter. There's a lot of good education there. There's like about a book volume in there by now, everything that I've written about food intelligence. We come with proof, and we come with work. Now we're giving proof of work to everybody. So I appreciate you guys, and this is good to have these conversations and get some awareness in the Bitcoin community.
Awesome. Well, guys, make sure you give Texas Slim a follow. And if you, like us, want to eat as much meat that's really, what's going into your food, and then what you're putting in your food, make sure you check out what him and his team have available. We're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and then Chris and I are going to be talking news and notes from around the world. We're live. I think this is a great opportunity to remind everyone that, yes, Alex McShane is in fact Brian Armstrong. And what he actually left for was not some other podcast, but in fact, to help Coinbase launch Coinbase NFT. The shitcoiner goes deeper into shitcoining.
That's fully a joke. Anyone that's wondering, that is not what Alex McShane was doing. Or Brian Armstrong and Alex McShane haven't been in a room together, Q. So maybe the conspiracy theory runs deep.
They are one and the same, and you're not going to convince me otherwise. However, yes, Alex did not go deal with Coinbase NFT. They already launched that. That is officially launched as of today. So the shitcoinery on Coinbase is about to get deeper and deeper. We talk very little about the effects of this on Bitcoin, but I think it's important for us to take a moment here. And Chris, you can totally rip me apart and disagree with anything that I'm about to say. But I think it's warranted because Coinbase is the most in your face exchange for normies out there. And so this tends to be sort of the first stop in crypto land. A lot of them don't realize you can just buy Bitcoin on Cash App. You can buy Bitcoin. Do not buy Bitcoin on Robinhood, but you can. You can buy Bitcoin on PayPal. You shouldn't, or Venmo. You shouldn't, but you can. They end up going to Coinbase. And as we see, because Coinbase is a publicly traded company, majority of their income, majority of their fees do not come from buying and selling Bitcoin. It literally comes from everything else that they sell. And now they've offered a new product, a new branch, if you will, that is in high demand. The NFT market is still lively. I may think it's a total scam. Chris may or may not agree with me. I know that Alex has slowly started buying NFTs and has even minted his own. So Brian Armstrong is really going into the shitcoinery. Only kind of kidding about that part. But like the point I'm trying to make is there has been a huge market that Coinbase has not been able to profit off of. And now you're giving their investors exposure to another market that's, quite frankly, got a lot of money circulating in it. I want to know your thoughts both on what this can mean for Coinbase, and then at large, what effect does this have on Coinbase's Bitcoin assets, either them buying or customers buying?
I guess I'll start. I am not an NFT guy. I know Alex kind of dabbles in that. He only dabbles, for the record, in, or at least to my knowledge, on like NFTs on Bitcoin. I still don't see the appeal in it. I like physical art if you're going to do physical art. And I don't even really like art, but I've bought in some art pieces to support artists I do like. The first thing is, I think this makes their shitcoin casino even worse. Like, it's only going to get worse. So Q, here, perfect example. We now have NFT on XYZ platform. You need to buy this new token. So not only do you have the tokenomics of like the pump and dump of like, oh, X, Y, and Z token is getting promoted by this VC firm or whatever. It's now a new NFT platform needs a new token. So you have tokenomics with it along with the NFT. So now it like further, I don't, how do I say this? It like reinforces the incentives of pumping more in shitcoin casinos. You know what I mean? Like, you have these tokens that say they're going to do X, Y, and Z. They're going to be better than YouTube. They're going to be better than Google. They're going to be better than whatever next thing that they say they're better than, while also saying we've actually decentralized art. Oh, we've decentralized the metaverse. We've decentralized the real estate in the metaverse. Like, it's only going to pick up speed now because it's another revenue stream that they have. Q, I don't know if you want to riff on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just wanted to further confirm the claims that I made yesterday, because I do want to unpack a little bit of the Coinbase Goldman stuff as it relates to all of this as well. So what I find very interesting is we've established on this show multiple times that there is this pump and dump in altcoins, and there is a specific Coinbase dump. Go look at the Shiba Inu price. Go look at the Dogecoin price. Go look at any of these other shit coins. And the moment they get listed on Coinbase, there's a momentary spike up because of the retail interest, and then a hard sell-off that none of these shit coins have recovered from. Now, I brought this up yesterday, and I have the chart up to further confirm what I said. Coinbase itself is a shitcoin off of this type of technical trading. Why do I say that? Its all-time high price was reached on the day of its IPO, where it had that crazy candlestick that went all the way up, and then they were like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. So what do? They brought it back down to earth. But guess what? It literally kept selling off. It has never one time even come within a stone's throw of that all-time high from the IPO. Almost like the exact same trading style of these shit coins that got a little pump from the excitement of retail and then sold off hard and fast and left everyone holding the bag. Now, we're essentially establishing the shit coinery on this trash platform. What I want to re-emphasize, however, is this idea that they don't give a shit about Bitcoin because they see the monetary incentives for their business model elsewhere. Now, where does Bitcoin fit into this equation? We have yesterday that announcement that the first Goldman Sachs Bitcoin-backed loan was awarded to Coinbase. Now, what does this really mean? We're purely speculating at this point. I don't think any of us, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, like I personally don't believe that they're spending it on Bitcoin. And if anything, they're literally leveraging their Bitcoin position to then turn around and invest in shit coinery. Could you imagine? Like,
Yeah.
that is the way I'm reading it, because you do that. And then all of a sudden, yes, Coinbase NFT was in the works for a while, but it's now getting launched. I personally, pure speculation, believe that Coinbase is earmarking that money more to use in the crypto space than anything to do Bitcoin related. But it's interesting to me that they're using Bitcoin to get that money to then go out and do this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll caveat that with two different things. So the reason that they had to use Bitcoin is probably because the banks are starting to catch on that they realize Bitcoin's pristine collateral. They're not going to take X, Y, and Z token as like the collateral because they're worried about collapse or there isn't enough liquidity. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. Bitcoin has the largest market cap, which is a horrible metric, but it's got the largest market cap by far, and it's got the most liquidity in the system in terms of what people can use and like collateralize it. The second thing is, this is my tinfoil hat on. I don't think, I mean, while Coinbase indirectly has Bitcoin on their balance sheet by basically custodying it for their customers, like, I mean, if you have Bitcoin on Coinbase, which Q and I do not recommend, but let's just say you, hypothetically here, if you have Bitcoin on Coinbase, I don't know if they're actually using their Bitcoin or if they're collateralizing their customers. And I'm not making an allegation, you know, one way or the other, but that is a very likelihood that they're kind of commingling their, you know, their customers' Bitcoin, not their own. They don't have a balance sheet strategy like MicroStrategy where they're saying, this is our balance sheet, this is our P&L strategy. They don't have one like Tesla with like selling it and then they bought Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Like they're just, they're just commingling, it appears, all these different tokenomics or tokens, one of them being Bitcoin, and they very well could be taking their customers' Bitcoin and collateralizing it in a loan. That's a very dangerous sentiment. And if you have Bitcoin on Coinbase, 1, take it off, 2, delete your account, and 3, use a different brokerage to do so. Or even better yet, use a non-KYC method with RoboSats, with going to a local meetup and asking to buy it. If you know anyone that mines Bitcoin, paying them cash, and then they can pay their electricity bill instead of selling Bitcoin. There's many different ways you can do it. But I guess that's just my 2 cents. Go ahead, Q.
Okay, I don't disagree with that potential. And I'm curious what their next earnings reports, because they will have to disclose the terms of this loan. Mm-hmm. So I'm keeping an eye on that before I flatly say like, yo, they just levered. Because look, for those who are not aware, may not realize like how some of these exchanges works. So shout out to Dylan LeClaire and Sam Rule, the 2 heads behind Bitcoin Magazine Pro, all of the on-chain analytics stuff for Bitcoin. Unfortunately, they're not able to join us today, but I highly recommend you guys subscribe at least to the free subscription where they release all of their weekly reports just a few days after their paid subscribers get it, and then you get the monthly report a little bit later. So be sure to check out that product. But they actually highlight this in one of their most recent issues where, you know, they talk about whale wallets and then like minnow wallets and so on and so forth based on the number of Bitcoin that this wallet address has or is holding. And they highlight the fact that, you know, there are these whales with over 100,000 Bitcoin. Like, wouldn't that be nice, guys? But a good majority of them are just exchanges. It's Jack Mallers and Strike. It's Cash App and Coinbase. It's all of these different exchanges that hold this massive stack of Bitcoin for you, the individual, the retail buyer, to buy from them. And so those get pooled into this same whale category for on-chain analytics. Now, I understand that because I spend time reading things like what the Blockware Solutions, Bitcoin Magazine Pro, and other on-chain type of conversations throughout Twitter. The investors at Goldman Sachs do not. The investors at Goldman Sachs may not necessarily know the difference between this wallet address that's purely for custody purposes and this wallet address that is actually like owned by the people that are showing you this address. So all of a sudden you do create this potential scenario, tinfoil hat, pure speculation, where if greed begets common sense and fiduciary duty, you could see companies, exchanges use that big stack that's really our Bitcoin to then go out and get a loan from a place like Goldman Sachs. I'm not saying they've done it, nor is Chris saying they've done it, but I'm just walking you through step by step how something as crazy and absurd like that could very simply be accomplished. All it takes is one naive person on the other side of this loan to not realize what's going on. That's all it really takes.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm just throwing some links in the chat real quick for getting your conference tickets and using FOMO at the store for a Bitcoin magazine to get cheaper stuff. Go ahead, Q. What do you want to say?
I just wanted to quickly shout out Turk Wrench 1969. Not only did you have the best comment of today in the chat that I literally took a screenshot to show our internal team, but also we will be updating everyone on what Powell and the Fed says. We're keeping an eye on that press conference. It'll start in about 13 minutes. As he has pointed out, yes, the Fed has announced to everyone's expectation that they are going to raise hikes by 0.5%. Powell should start talking in a little bit, but for right now, I'm just pulling it up. The markets are tame. The biggest mover right now is the NASDAQ at a 0.4% gain. Volume is down on the broader stock market, but up on the NASDAQ, and the NASDAQ is up 0.1% for now. The S&P is up 0.3% for now. Powell has yet to open his mouth, and we have seen time and time again, the markets sometimes react positively or negatively to what Powell has to say once he gets up there. So I would not be expecting this to be where the markets end. We still have a little bit more than an hour and a half till market close today. But before we dive into deeper on that stuff, I want to bring up the California news. Quite possibly my least favorite person in the state of California is Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom has decided to put in yet another executive order because, fun fact, he has not relinquished his emergency COVID powers or whatever bullshit he gave himself. He still has these emergency COVID powers. And so what is he doing? He's still enacting executive orders here or there. This time it's for crypto and Web3. And he's honestly just, in my opinion, off of reading the statement from the office of Gavin Newsom, and I'll post the link right now in this chat. He's essentially building off of Biden's executive order. There's a lot of like, oh, we're going to collect data and we're going to invest in this, we're going to do that. But like, there's no action of his 7-point plan. The only actionable words or verbs that are used are create, but it's used in the context of creating a transparent and consistent business environment for companies operating in blockchain. So that's negated. Then you have two of these that say collect feedback from a broad range. So throw those 2 points out. So now you've already thrown out the first 3 out of 7 bullet points of what this executive order is supposed to do, because those are not actionable things. Those are just like very vague, like, yeah, we'll like collect some data here, or like we'll talk to this person here. No, you're not. You want to know what he's really doing? He just got a bunch of money from Web3 people. He just got a bunch of money from shitcoiners, and they want a seat at the table. That's all this is. That's all this is. The next 2 bullet points, the verb uses engage in a public process, engage in, encourage regulatory clarity. But like, engage in what capacity? It is your job to pass legislation, not talk about it. So now we're down, out of the 7 bullet points, 5 of them are literal just bullshit, like blow smoke up our ass, let's pretend like we're doing something. The last 2, explore opportunities to deploy blockchain technologies. All right, more research bullshit. And then the last one, identify opportunities to create a research and workforce environment. So it's literally nothing actionable, just a bunch of ideas around, hey, let's explore this and maybe we'll figure out what to do. I.e., you got a lot of money from Mark Andreessen and Web3, and they want to say and how it gets shaped from a regulatory standpoint in this state of California where I reside. I call bullshit Gavin Newsom, but that's just my 2 cents.
I don't live in the state of California, so I will leave the California rant to Q, but I think he did an excellent job. On to some more fun topics before we get into FOMC stuff, which we could take up the rest of the episode, to be honest. 2 things, Q. May the 4th be with you. I know there's been a lot of Bitcoin puns, a lot of Star Wars fans. I won't say that Bitcoiners are Star Wars fans or Star Wars fans are Bitcoiners, but there's a lot of funny puns, talking about it. Also, May the 4th be with you, or May 4th coincides with Hal Finney, or was Hal Finney's birthday. Rest in peace to Hal Finney, one of the very first people running Bitcoin. He has the most infamous tweet of saying tweeting out running Bitcoin back in 2009, a day after Satoshi mined the first block. I know that he was in contact with Satoshi on the mailing list, as well as Satoshi had sent him payments. Correct me if I'm wrong. So obviously Satoshi mined the first block, but I think the first transaction was from Satoshi to Hal Finney. Hal Finney.
The first block, those Bitcoins are technically never actually rewarded. So that first batch of 50 was supposed to get burnt. And then the genuine peer-to-peer transaction was Satoshi sending some to Hal. Yes. Rest in power. We hope you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing now, we hope you are proud of what the Bitcoin community has grown into and built off of your hard work. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I was actually talking to someone recently at one of the Bitcoin meetups that I was at. They said, so Hal was in the San Fran area, and I think it was in 2012 or 13, Hal showed up to a Bitcoin meetup in San Fran, one of the few. And there was a few people that are still alive today that got to talk to him. And they said he was just so down to earth, really cool dude. Loved running. That was, I know there's many pictures of him online just running. But yeah, I mean, he's just an OG cypherpunk. He goes way back with Adam Back and Nick Szabo and just a ton of the people. He's an OG. I mean, that's really what it is. He unfortunately succumbed to Lou Gehrig's disease, I believe in 2014, 2015. I forget when he passed away. You could probably look it up right now. But yeah, I mean, just kind of a fun thing that May 4th and Hal Finney's birthday are the same day. In other news, in happier times and rest in peace, Hal, MicroStrategy was basically saying it could potentially face a margin call if it saw Bitcoin fall to a price of around $21,000 per Bitcoin. So the way that this is worded was kind of weird because yes, they can get margin called, but MicroStrategy has enough Bitcoin on their balance sheet that they could sell the Bitcoin or close out the loan by paying it back in fiat. Or what they would most likely do is put up more Bitcoin as collateral to lower their limit. That's probably what I would see them doing because they already have it self-custodied at Coinbase. They'd probably just bump up the rates on the limit. And then the next time that they got fiat, I'm assuming, they would just pay off more of the loan in order to prevent selling any of the Bitcoin. Q, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you put it very well, and my expectations are in line with yours that they're not going to sell anything. They designed this loan to essentially give them that backstop of if it starts to decline, we can put more Bitcoin in to decrease sort of that lower threshold for a margin call, which I anticipate the next deployment anywhere from 25% decline from 42. So looking at 12. So around 30K should be around the next deployment if Bitcoin goes that low. I'm very bearish right now, short term. I do anticipate the stock market to topple over. I do not anticipate the correlation to be ending anytime soon. So if I believe those two things to be true, I do believe cheaper sats are on the horizon. I'm never going to time it. I'm still DCAing myself, but I am waiting for a big bulk buy. And I think there will be an opportunity sooner rather than later to do something very interesting with that. I'm also genuinely curious because you brought up something very interesting in our chat that based on the current market cap of MicroStrategy and the current market cap of their entire Bitcoin stack, looks like MicroStrategy is once again trading at a discount based on just purely their value of the Bitcoins on holding. Do you want to maybe dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think right now, and this is yesterday's number, so I think they could have changed. So they are evaluated at $3.9 billion in terms of you're taking all of the outstanding stock, and that basically what that means is the overall total shares of stock of MicroStrategy. They're at 3.9 billion, but total Bitcoin on their balance sheet is 4.8 billion. So if you were to divide the price of the stock by the underlying assets of the Bitcoin that are on their balance sheet, that's an 81.25% amount on that basic Bitcoin, or basically the shares are down 19% by comparison of the total assets on their balance sheet. And that's not even including the business or anything else it said. It's just you're looking at shares versus the Bitcoin on their balance sheet. That's not including any of the buildings, the servers, the software, like all the other things that are built up on there. I'm sure that MicroStrategy has real estate. I don't know if they own their headquarters or rent it, whatever it may be. But Q brought up a good point. MicroStrategy is leveraged. We just talked about, potentially getting margin called at 21K. The one thing that I forget to know, I think they only like levered up 4% or 5% of their balance sheet. So even if you're putting that into the equation, they're still at a discount of about 14 to 15% if you're doing that calculation in your head. So basically it's trading at a discount of 15%. Q, I don't know if you want to riff on that.
Yeah, I mean, I was literally just sitting there on my phone doing these numbers yesterday during FedWatch. So grain of salt, but if this stack was their full stack based on the discount that MicroStrategy is trading off of versus the full stack of Bitcoin on their reserves, that would signal an almost 20% discount. Cool. Sorry, had a moment there, but that 20% discount kind of actually falls in line with roughly the 25% of leverage that they took out. What I mean by that is they essentially took out, for simplicity of numbers sake, they took out they put $100 up for collateral, but they did a 25% collateralization. So what they got for their $100 was $25. They essentially did that with their Bitcoin, where they got 25% of the value of the full Bitcoin stack that they put up. But that in turn gives them such a nice drawdown. That's why they're able to really allow it to go to 21K and even lower based on the total stack that they still have to deploy. Now, what I found very interesting, and maybe I'll do a thread on this on Twitter or not, depending on how much weed I smoke today, is the idea that this remaining bit, so right now MicroStrategy full stack only trading at a 20% discount, roughly 20 to 19, that last 5 to 6% actually coincides with a 10% drop in the price of MicroStrategy stock. That 10% drawdown takes MicroStrategy stock to roughly $307 a share, which just so happens to be the recent short-term high that MicroStrategy made. So these things, to me as a technical trader, like I sent this message to Chris where I was like, hey, I've not looked at the chart, but like based on the numbers we're throwing around here, a 10% drawdown is actually like more than likely for MicroStrategy. Then I go look at the chart and I was like, oh, I just put a buy order on MicroStrategy stock at 307 a share. Because in my opinion, I genuinely think it either bounces up for a short little dead cat bounce before ripping below, or it will rip below this to make a new bottom, just like the NASDAQ will make a new bottom, and so will Bitcoin. But this is what a bearish person who's trading technically on the stock market with the hypothesis and theory that Bitcoin is correlated to the stock market. All of this is negated if that correlation, which still is at over 90% with the NASDAQ 100 trailing 30 days. We're starting to see little decouplings here or there, but for the most part, it's still so highly correlated. We talked to Greg Foss and Dr. Jeff Ross the other day, and the two of them even brought up this correlation will not go away until education really takes the front seat. And they're not talking about canceling student loans. They're not talking about sending people to grad school. They're talking about educating the idiots in finance about the best financial tool ever created, the soundest money we've ever seen as humans. And so until that happens, people like them are not expecting this to decouple. So this is just my mini rant on where I expect the market to go. Please be careful. Do not take this as trading or technical. Do not take this as, what's the exact terminology? This is not financial advice. Like, do your own due diligence, do your own research. If you want to DM me and ask me direct questions and we go back and forth, I'm more than happy to like share my perspective, but that's all it is. It's just my perspective and my opinion. So I want to make perfectly clear.
Yeah, I think as we're talking right now, it is 2:30 p.m. Eastern. The FOMC meeting is starting now. I know that we're kind of all monitoring that meeting, as is the rest of the world. We're assuming that quotes are going to be inflation's too high. We need to raise interest rates. Obviously, they were posturing in their press release notes that they're still planning to raise 50 basis points. I'm sure that if the market goes to absolute insane, he might walk back out a few hours later and say, oh, no, I said 50 basis points. I meant 25. Or this is just a speculation, but it has been known to happen that Jerome Powell, obviously chairman of the Fed, and or Janet Yellen could come out in a few hours if things go completely haywire or things go down a lot. They could step back some of their comments. That's not too uncommon to happen when you're
it's selling off. Sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead. No, give me the update.
I'm watching the NASDAQ 1 minute daily chart. And in the last 30 minutes, the NASDAQ has just sold off over 200 points. Like, and the truth is it sold off these 200 points and then bought back another like 150 to then sell it off again. We're seeing insane volatility right now in the NASDAQ over the last 30 minutes in particular. To me, I'm reading this. The market has no idea what direction it wants to go in. It is genuinely waiting for Powell to either be too hawkish and send it tanking or be too optimistic or say something.
Dovish and hawkish. Sorry, those are the two terminology. Yeah,
I was spacing on the bullish version of it, but you're either, if he's too dovish, sending the market, boosting the market higher. We're literally witnessing the market just flip-flopping this. This is over a 1% sort of, this is actually like a 1.5% swing that we've essentially seen the NASDAQ make in 30 minutes. That is huge. That is not something insurmountable. That's not what they're going to talk about, though. They're not going to say anything about, oh, in the last 30 minutes, it did this. But that is a huge tell that too much volatility. Sorry. Go ahead,
no problem. 45 minutes ago, I was kind of updating the group. Going into, this is 45 minutes ago, so this is just giving you a reference. NASDAQ was up 0.18% on the day. S&P was up 0.22% on the day. The Dow was up 0.26% on the day. The NASDAQ now I'm looking at it, it is down 0.41% on the day. So if you're just simple math, it's about 0.59% down, and it's still dropping. I know not to get too much off of the rails here, but tying this back to Bitcoin, obviously we were talking about correlation so much on Monday with Greg Foss and Jeff Ross. With that being said, you might have an opportunity to pick up some more cheap sats in today, tomorrow, this weekend. I do think that Bitcoin is a leading indicator a lot of times, and people don't realize that. The stock market only trades 9:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, excluding banker holidays and all those different things. So while Bitcoin we've seen it take a dump from about 40K or 41K down to 38, Bitcoin might remain flat. It might continue to go down. If the markets start to sell off, then Greg and Jeff brought up a great point. You don't sell what you want to, you sell what you can or what you have to. Meaning that if all of a sudden these bankers and or corporations are starting to get margin called because they're so leveraged on their stock portfolios, the only thing that's fully liquid and can trade 24/7 might be Bitcoin. So we might see further selling of it. And then it gets to this whole crazy cycle of then we start seeing people put on leverage shorts. And then when they start putting on leverage shorts, it pushes the price artificially down. And then, things can get very crazy in the coming days. We're not saying it's going to go one way or the other, but highly recommend in these uncertain times, don't be on leverage if you are. If you're Michael Saylor and you have a huge balance sheet and you could afford to do that, that's his prerogative. But I would hate to be in any type of leverage position right now. We don't know if the market's going to rip or dump for Bitcoin. I would suspect short-term bearish, kind of along the same guidelines as Greg and Jeff were mentioning. And just hodl tight, hang in there, everyone. Q, if there's anything you want to riff off that.
I mean, I love what you were bringing up about the NASDAQ being a trailing indicator and Bitcoin being the leading indicator. I think you're absolutely right. The fact that Bitcoin doesn't sleep makes, in my opinion, Bitcoin, especially right now, the most pure tech futures market out there. You see Bitcoin making highs weeks before the NASDAQ does. You see Bitcoin making lows weeks before the NASDAQ does. I'm genuinely not concerned. Like, I saw a conversation circulating on Twitter a couple of days ago when the NASDAQ made its like most recent low, undercutting, I think it was last week's or the low from 2 weeks ago, perhaps. But when it undercut that, a lot of people were saying, hey, man, Bitcoin didn't make a new low. NASDAQ did, though. Like, are we starting to see this decoupling take place? Dude, no. Bitcoin's still under 39K. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I love the optimism there, but no. You're just seeing the NASDAQ do what Bitcoin did weeks ago. And we're going to keep seeing that. So, again, for you degen options traders who maybe want to figure out a way to beat the system, use Bitcoin as your volatility sort of expectation, if you will. It's a little tricky though, because look, the days that the VIX makes its highs are days where you see Bitcoin make highs. Greg Foss puts it excellently, and I'm going to do a terrible job of paraphrasing him. But the idea that essentially what you are getting when you are trading Bitcoin is you are trading for the volatility of Bitcoin that you are then taking away from the stock market. And you want that volatility because volatility is not always bad. Volatility is not up or is not just down, it's up and down. So if you can't handle or stomach the downs, you don't deserve the ups. But I'm just rambling and ranting at this point. Feel free to
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go. What were you saying?
Essentially, I was just bullet points and condensing this. Feel free to use, within reason, Bitcoin as this sort of leading indicator for the NASDAQ. If you want to be aggressive, trading puts, call options, just obviously be careful, do your own due diligence. None of this is financial advice. We're just telling you what we're witnessing by paying attention to this stuff on a very, very regular basis.
I'm going to do a quick rundown, Q. There's a bunch of quotes coming in real time from Jerome Powell right now. They're very short and sweet. It should only take me, 30 seconds to a minute. So from Jerome Powell, and these are snippets of things that he has said. Inflation is much too high.
Time out. I wanted, before you do that, every single index is now turned negative for the day.
So. All right. In real time, we do it live. Inflation is much too high, and we understand the hardship it causes. We have the right tools we need and the resolve it takes. And like I said, this is all from Jerome Powell. These are not my words. These are quotes from him. The labor market is extremely tight. Inflation is much too high. Anticipates ongoing increases will be appropriate. We will begin the process of significantly reducing the assets on our balance sheet, meaning the Federal Reserve. Overall economic activity edged down on first quarter. Household spending continued to expand. Labor market has continued to strengthen. Improvements in labor markets conditions have been widespread. Labor demand is very strong. Wages are rising at the fastest pace in as many years, which is kind of, we can talk about that in a little bit. Russian invasion of Ukraine is causing many hardships. Effects on the economy remain uncertain. The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by the mandates to create maximum employment and stable prices. We are strongly committed to restoring price stability. There is broad sense that additional 50 basis increases on the table for future meetings. So basically that's saying that, we're going to potentially increase an additional 50 basis points to what they're already signaling today. We intend to significantly reduce the size of our balance sheet. Our balance sheet decisions are also guided by the mandates. Inflation has surprised to the upside in the past year, and further surprises could be in store. Yep. So that's pretty much everything that he said right now. I know that there's a lot that I just threw at you. Anything that sticks out to you that you want to talk about?
Let's start with the inflation stuff, because this is the same man who had the audacity to look the American people in the eyes and promise them that inflation is transitory. Now he's saying inflation is not only here to stay, but could actually be worse, if I'm interpreting that correctly. So I want to start first by asking why or how does he have a job where you can consistently be wrong, make mistakes, and jeopardize the well-beings of a majority of Americans and have no repercussions and have no one to really answer to? Like, I'm flabbergasted.
And even to that point as well, he didn't even take the blame. And I'm not saying he's going to take the blame, but at least say, oh, we printed a lot of money in the last 24 months. That may be a cause of it. He just kind of alluded to Russia and Ukraine is causing a lot of this inflation. So he's completely pushing it off to a different related topic. We're not here to pick sides of if you're Russian or Ukrainian or anywhere in between on that issue, but it's very interesting that they're trying to always offshore the cause for inflation or the problems without looking internally to say that it was them or the excess money printing or pegging rates at the all-time historic lows. Q, if you want to riff on that.
I'm gonna riff on that, and then also, can you throw some sats, because we got some more likes now.
I did. I already threw the sats. Someone won them.
Oh, someone won them?
Yeah, they won.
LOL. That shows you how much I'm really paying attention to the chats. I mean, look, I'm just waiting for. I wanted to ask this to Dr. Jeff the other day, but I was like, this is just like more of a riffy type question. And maybe honestly, having this with you as a conversation with you is better. We've seen them change the CPI and the inputs of this formula to make it look as though inflation has not been as bad as it has been for the last 40 years, roughly, like 35 years. I genuinely am expecting in this calendar year, the formula for CPI will be changed again in some way, shape, or form. Whether that means that they decrease the weight of things like gas and meat, or it just simply means that they eliminate other inputs or introduce other inputs. And this is very important because technology is very deflationary, and they increase the weight of tech in this CPI. All of a sudden, you can start to massage out a number that accomplishes what you want it to accomplish, when in reality, I'm paying $1.50 more for 12 eggs at the grocery store. Like, that is a 25% hike. That's not a 8.5% increase in my year over year inflation. No, that's a 25% increase in a quarter over quarter cost of me as a consumer. And it's only getting worse. So I'm curious your thoughts on this idea that we could very well see the CPI formula be changed this calendar year, because we've seen the narrative around inflation get passed literally like hot potatoes. No, it's their fault, actually. No, it's Russia's fault. No, it's the supply chain. No, it's China. Dude, it's literally your fault. Take responsibility for your actions.
Q, I think that's a really, really good point. I think that goes hand in hand with the book For the Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. It's a great book. It talks about technology being a deflationary force and money printing is obviously an inflationary force. So there are two forces that are fighting each other. If technology were to win in that battle of price of printing money versus deflationary, mean things are getting cheaper. I mean, it's, free to use Twitter. It's, it's free, quote unquote, but you're the product. So there is a trade-off to things being free, which is something that you do have to understand. But in that example, what was I going to say? Oh, so Bitcoin is a deflationary money. So it's going up in value relative to the money printing that's going on. Q, I don't know if you've ever heard this stat, and you might like this. One S19 right now. So obviously that is a What's Miner S19 ASIC miner. S19, that it's one of their latest models. They have a couple of provisions, but anyway, the S19 model itself has more hashing power than the whole Bitcoin network in 2013. Think about how crazy that is. I know that's 9 years ago and that seems like forever, but that just shows you the power of efficiency and how these ASIC miners are truly a global, and they're competing to try and get the best hash rate in the world. Just compared to 9 years ago, one ASIC miner is more hash power than the whole network of all the computers in the world working to try and beat each other. Isn't that's just like, that's hard to fathom. You know what I mean? Like, I really can't wrap my mind around that.
It is, but like, I'm going to sound like a douchebag, but like it feeds into this idea that like throughout cycles of technology, like technology's growth is so much faster than growth in other industries. iPhones are the perfect case study. Like I'm looking at a camera right now, but the truth is like this camera, the quality of this camera, the quality of this lens are available in the pockets of people who have the newest iPhone. And that newest iPhone has the same computing power that used to take up like a whole floor, maybe multiple floors of an office building, let alone just 5 years ago, the computing power on my phone now is equivalent to like the desktop computer that I use. We see this technological deflationary component because on top of these computers being more efficient, the cost is not necessarily increasing at that same rate, which is very fascinating because that signals to me deflation. You're paying more, yes, but the bang for your buck you're getting is much more all of a sudden. So it's curious to see. I mean, look, I'm just waiting for the days where quantum computing gets thrown into the equation, because then the hash rate, like the hash rate at the end of my life, I genuinely believe is going to be so much higher than what we have now, that like this, I think by the time I have kids, the hash rate will have multiple commas in it, but that's just my 2 cents.
I mean, the hash rate already does have multiple commas if you look at it hash per second, because they keep changing the terahash, petahash, right. Like they keep adding the prefixes. But I mean, yeah, it's going to keep going exponential, I really think. I'm going to read off some more quotes real quick, if you don't mind, Q. There's so Jerome Powell speaking once again. There's a path by which we would have to demand. We would be able to have demand moderate in the labor market and have vacancies come down without an unemployment going up. In principle, it seems to be moderating demand. We could see vacancies come down as a result, putting supply and demand closer together, which would give us a chance to curb inflation without a recession. Labor market, very, very strong, he says. 75 basis points is not something the committee is considering at this moment. Expectations are that we'll start to see inflation flatten out, not necessarily declining. So he's saying that, you know, they might keep seeing 8.5%, but it's not going to decline much. We see that information that we're getting there. We want to see evidence that inflation is coming down, not remaining flat. If we see that, if we see what we expect, then we'll have another 50 basis points increase in the next meeting. We'll talk about a neutral rate. We were talking about a concept we estimated with broad band of uncertainty. We're raising rates to see what as the broader range of plausible ranges of neutral, but we know there is an indication that tells us when we get there. We'll be doing that and we see the effects on the economy. There's a false prediction that we as policymakers don't really feel. If higher rates are required, we will not hesitate to deliver them. Those are just kind of his last couple of minutes. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of gaslighting. Hugh, anything that you want to add on that?
I mean, I don't think I can legally say this, but I challenge Jerome Powell to meet me in the octagon. I welcome, like, let's do it. I challenge you, Jerome Powell, to a cage match where the winner will be the new chairman of the Fed. Simple as that. Like, let's do it. I think another very important thing to touch on is this idea that the flattening of inflation is not the same as inflation being transitory. The flattening of inflation is historically what has happened during these periods of inflation, where you see these higher prices never go away. It's why, shout out In-N-Out, because like In-N-Out's the best. I was having this conversation with a pleb over the weekend where, you know, how do I explain inflation to my kids? Like, they kind of understand it, but it kind of goes over their head. I was like, next time you go to In-N-Out, look for on the inside wallpapers, they have like what the In-N-Outs used to look like when they first opened up and like what the menu was when they first opened, but they also have what the price was. And I'm not kidding when I say it was 10 cents for a hamburger, 15 cents for a cheeseburger. Yo, a slice of cheese for 5 cents being a third of the cost of the food, by the way, absurd. Not the point. The point I'm making, though, is there was genuinely a time where it cost you a nickel to buy something at McDonald's, or your grandparents telling you, oh, this candy bar was half a cent. Like that was a genuine denomination of currency that we had that has since been lost. This coin shortage that we've felt over the last 2 years, watch as we no longer see things priced in cents anymore. Watch as the rounding error essentially gets exacerbated into our cents. And then we no longer have coins. Everything is just rounded up or down to the next whole dollar. We're never going to see these prices go down. That would require deflation. What would actually instigate deflation? Let's go back to supply and demand. We either have to see supply shoot up so exponentially and keep demand stagnant, or supply stays stagnant and demand shoots down. Well, unfortunately for us, based on everything that we're seeing, reading, and learning both about the supply chain issues, as well as the farming issues that we're dealing with, that we heard from Texas Slim and that I keep trying to report on, we are seeing and witnessing the supply dwindling. Well, demand doesn't go away. You don't just wake up tomorrow and decide, hey, I'm not going to eat today. Like I opt for that. Some of you do. Some of you fast, and my hat goes off to you because like, holy crap, I couldn't. I get so hangry. I'm the last person you want to be around when you're hangry. So if shit starts really hitting the fan, don't come hang out with me. That's all I'm gonna say there. Chris, I'd love your thoughts on the idea of like this inflation stagnating at 8.5% and what that really looks like.
I think Jeff Ross is, I guess I'll go, I agree with him. Like, I think we are like, it's kind of, he used the analogy, you're on the freeway, you're going 85 miles an hour. You know, the way that inflation slows down is you take your foot off the gas pedal and you're still going 75 miles an hour. You're still going pretty fast. That's not like coming to a halt. I think it's going to be like, how do I describe this? So everyone understands like the S&P 500 index. And the reason I'm using this is because you have the broad markets. You have the top 500 companies in the United States and, you know, essentially the world. I know there's some companies abroad that are excluded from that. But assuming as the energy goes higher or something else goes lower, I think like we're going to see price fluctuations across the board. So their manipulated basket of CPI might remain at 8.5%. But that doesn't mean that oil and gas can't get expensive, but then food might, you know, slow down and not continue to increase. So it's already high. The prices are probably not going down. That doesn't mean they're going to keep going higher. They'll remain flat. Maybe they'll drop a couple cents here and there, but they're not going to go like kind of like to your point, like energy might getting more expensive, but you might have a little bit of reprieve at the grocery store or vice versa. You know, I'm not saying housing will go down. Housing is normally a lagging indicator. So I know a lot of people that live in cities are saying they're seeing their rents go up hundreds of dollars, and they stayed there the entire pandemic. And it's like all of a sudden they're on their third lease. So they had 2 leases during the pandemic, and this is their third lease that they're going to renew. And they're like, I can't afford to live in this city anymore. But it's not just where they're living, it's all the places. So then now they have to like move to either a cheaper area, but even the cheaper areas are getting more expensive. So we're kind of seeing the shrinkflation. I know we always joke about like, as ketchup bottles, you see them being these huge family size, and then all of a sudden now they're a smaller size, but they're the same price. That's the exact same thing. They're trying to hide inflation in various ways. Q, do you want to add anything to that?
I want to add something because I shout out to my old roommate, Reed, who has stayed living at the place that we were living in, like before the pandemic started. I did move back home with my family. Just why not? So he and I were having this conversation recently because they're now jacking his rent up, and they got dinged with some charge called.
While you're looking at this, Bitcoin is actually rallying right now. We're at 39,600. So kind of like what I was saying, Q, you know, Bitcoin's a leading indicator being in bearish sentiment. But right now, it's going up in price, which is awesome. And just goes to show, I have no idea if this price is going to continue to go down, continue to go up while the indices are going down. Bitcoin's going the opposite direction. It's very cool to see in real time. But anyone that says that they know what's going to happen with the price, doesn't know anything. Myself included, Q and Q included, maybe even God himself, but I don't know.
Well, so
going back to your point, your roommate, sorry.
So I just wanted to bring up, like, there's this thing being charged out called a lease renewal fee. And like, he asked me, he's like, did we ever sign this at any of the places we lived before? I was like, no, I didn't even see this when they wanted us to renew the lease last time. Like, I asked some friends who own properties, like, it's all these fees are just arbitrary BS. They get passed from the state to the homeowner, to the landlord, property manager, whoever, to then pass it on to the renter. Like, in the same way that I was venting the other day about like the tickets that I got for driving toll roads in Florida, which, like, honestly, toll roads are the stupidest invention ever. Like, oh my God, I pay enough in taxes. But that aside, like, these arbitrary fees that are being introduced due in large part, like, yes, you hear the narrative of, well, this is just greed, like the corporation is taking advantage. Like, I buy that, but I also buy that the state is just coming down and saying, like, well, I need this fee now. I need this, and I need this. Like, for the last 2 years, a lot of Americans weren't paying mortgages due to the pandemic. Well, the day has come, and now these mortgage payments are due. Like, we're about to witness, I think, a very uncomfortable remainder of the year. I think one of the biggest triggers as to why we're now seeing all the markets shoot up. The NASDAQ is now up over 1.5%. So this swing that we were talking about earlier, not only did we see the NASDAQ decline now 1.5%, it's now at highs of the day, and it has essentially swung back up from the lows of the day about, if I'm doing my quick math correctly, like a 2.5 to almost 3% spread for the whole day. That's a big spread for the day. And a good majority of this has come pretty much since Powell's press conference. Expectations were exactly this. I think the key trigger for this, however, is the 75 basis point hike is not on the table. There's historical precedent that the stock market has declined in the 2 weeks leading up to a 50 basis point hike and the 2 weeks after it. However, after that, so for this 4-week window, the stock market has historically declined during a 50 basis point hike. On the tail end of that, after that final week, the stock market has historically entered a bull market. I need to reread this sort of research paper, but I'm curious as to what effect, if any, 2 consecutive 50 basis point hikes could have, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, we're now 6 weeks away from the next FOMC meeting. So what this leaves us, if we're following this sort of trajectory of 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after, there's going to be a 2-week window in 2 weeks that could see the market really swing up. But if that pressure is still there for another 50 basis point hike, however, that pressure is expected. The market doesn't mind these rate hikes, as we saw during the last FOMC meeting and as what we're witnessing right now. In fact, the market appreciates this because it's in line with what it was expecting. There's nothing unexpected. There's no wrench being thrown at it. So long as the Fed doesn't throw a wrench into this, so long as they do not change what the market is expecting, you can expect a short little run up here. I think personally, I'm looking at taking positions in certain equities for a short little swing, nothing more than a 10 to 15% gainer. But I think there's an opportunity, a small little window. That's just my sort of 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely very interesting. A lot of the indices are showing positive now. I guess that's part of the reason Bitcoin is going up and correlating as well. We keep saying that correlation. And I think it's exactly to what you were saying, Q. Like the markets are expecting one thing. If it meets their expectations, it's, bull, bull, bull. If it does not, it's bear, bear, bear. So I guess they're expecting it. I guess they weren't expecting, they thought he could potentially put a 75 basis point hike in the next 6 weeks in the next meeting. And since he said that's not on the table, the markets are all roaring ahead. And that's probably meant like a buy order. I could see just Wall Street going nuts, like calling all them, buy the whole index, just trying to buy as much as they can. Q, if there's anything else you want to do here, you want to wrap us out?
Let's wrap it up. Just as a reminder, we are going to go into a mini hiatus tomorrow and Friday, so there will be no new episodes of Bitcoin Magazine Live. We're having a company-wide meeting. We're all going on vacation. Don't check our Twitters. Don't check our Instagrams. Like, we're gone off the face of the earth for the next 72 hours. A few people will not return. Think like Survivor or The Most Dangerous Game, but closer to Most Dangerous Game than Survivor. Kidding. We'll be back next week. But in the meantime, if you have not yet already, make sure you subscribe to our channel here. Make sure you're following both Chris and I on Twitter. And most importantly, use promo code FOMO to get 10% off of everything at the Bitcoin Magazine store. I think that's a wrap. Am I missing anything, Chris?
Nope, that's it. Catch you later, everyone. Peace out.
Stack sats and stay humble.